fancy. You already know.
Why do you think you're so fancy?
Come on. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that make me. Let's talk about sex.
What does being fancy and sex have to do with peacocks? Well, early evolutionists wondered why the peacock's tail was so big. They came up with many hypotheses. One was for survival, and that they needed the tails in order to survive. However, they found that this was wrong. They next decided it was as a weapon for combat, and that they needed the tails in order to be able to fight properly and to attack any predators. However, this also was wrong. They then later decided it was for copulation, or sex, and that they needed it in order to mate. This ended up being the correct answer.
Natural selection is the process by which organisms become better adapted to their environment and produce more offspring. This can occur in numerous ways, such as negative selection, positive, stabilizing, directional, disruptive, and sexual selection. Sexual selection is the process of adaptation through the choice of better qualities during mating. Extravagant traits which reduce survival ability through size can be advantageous during mating. The more variation leads to an increase in sexual selection. The trait that is selected for, if heritable, will eventually become the norm in the population. There is intrasexual selection, which is between the same sexes of a species. This could be two males fighting for a territory. There is also intersexual selection. It is the selection that occurs between the different sexes of a species. This is between males and females, and the displays of different courtships.
When mating, females are more selective due to the fact that they have a much larger investment in terms of energy, because the females must care for the offspring until the offspring are able to function on their own. When mating, males are considered non-selective, and they're trying their best to spread their alleles to as many females as possible. This is due to the fact that in terms of energy, sperm are cheap, and for the male, reproduction is not very costly. However, given the choice, typically the male will choose the more superior female. In simpler terms, this means that the males look for a quantity over quality.
Was Darwin wrong about the sexual allure of the peacock's tail? A controversial study has found no evidence for the traditional view practically enshrined in evolutionary lore that peahens choose their partners depending on the quality of the peacock's tail. Morikyo Takahashi at the University of Tokyo in Japan studied peacocks and peahens from 1995 to 2001. They judged tail quality in two ways. First, by simply measuring tail length, and secondly, by taking photos of each male during the tail fanning ritual and counting the number of eye spots present. Next, they examined whether females choose mates with the best quality tails. During the 7 years of observation, Takahashi's team observed 268 successful matings. But surprisingly, they found that females mated with poor quality peacocks as often as with flashy high quality males. They concluded that the peacock's train is not the object of female sexual preference, contradicting Darwin's theory of sexual selection. Is it their luminously colored feathers decorated with enchanting eye spot patterns, or could it be those fancy head crests? Maybe it's their long legs outfitted with pointy spurs. In other words, what constitutes a hot peacock according to an eligible peahen? Jessica Jarzynski, a research scientist at UC Davis and Duke University, used peahen-sized custom-fitted cameras equipped with eye-tracking technology to study peacock courtship. Considered by Jarzynski to be a textbook example of sexual selection, the peacock is still elusive when it comes to mate selection. Jarzynski conducted an eye-tracking experiment on 12 female Indian peacocks to study their reaction to the prancing and strutting of males vying for their attention. The peahens wore a cap outfitted with two miniature cameras. One camera recorded the scene in front of the peahen, and the other recorded her eye movements as she sized up potential mate. As the high-tech peahen looked on and her tiny cameras recorded, the male peacock strutted his stuff by fanning and shaking his impressive tail feathers, causing the eye spots to shimmer in a brilliant display. After doing a little mating dance, the male twirled to show off his ruffled backside. A wireless transmitter, which was connected to the female's head-mounted camera, sent video signals to a computer. The female's eye movements were then displayed as coordinates on the computer screen. According to study results, peahens spent less than one-third of the time actually looking at their suitors while the male was busy parading in front of them. And when the females were eyeing the males, their focus was concentrated on the male's legs and the base of their semicircle tails. They barely ever glance at the upper parts of the tails where the eye-catching eye spots are situated, much less at their crested heads. Scientists insist that the peahens aren't being rude. They simply don't need all the pomp and circumstance to determine whether a male is suitable. The lower parts of a male's tail reveal the width or symmetry of his train, according to Yersinski. Maturity in peacocks can be measured by this width. The peacock's tail has been the classic example of sexual selection through mate choice for centuries. Although the peahens show really no interest in the elaborate tail, it had to evolve due to peahen preference. The peacock could survive better with a shorter, lighter tail, yet the sexual choice of the peahen has made peacocks evolve big, bright plumage that takes energy to grow, time to preen, and makes it harder to escape from predators. The peacock's tail evolved through mate choice, and the only biological function is to attract the peahen. It makes no sense for this elaborate tail to evolve for survival, but perfect sense for it to evolve by means of courtship. There are still things that remain uncertain about this elaborate yet burdensome tail, but we do know that its evolution over multiple generations is due largely to the selection of the inattentive peahen.